Orchids are tropical beauties that absolutely excel in their natural environments, but did you know they can thrive in your home too? And they're a lot easier to care for than you may have been led to believe. Orchids have evolved over time to grow on trees and rocks with mosses and ferns. Their roots have specially adapted to be multi-use. So just like your garden plants, they take in water and nutrients, but they also act as an anchor onto the thing they're growing on, just like the ones behind me. They also, in some orchids, can photosynthesize. Orchids grow in two distinct ways. Phalaenopsis orchids, also commonly known as moth orchids, and vanda orchids, like the one behind me, grow from a central stem. So the leaves are stacked up on top of each other, and there are single instances of flowering stems above, with roots spilling out below. Now, you might find that when you're planting in a decorative pots, the darker pots cause roots to form around the edges and the top of the pots. This is because the roots are constantly searching for light. So in a clear pot, they're more evenly spread and you'll find there are fewer roots. However, Oncidium, Cymbidium and Dendrobium have outwards forming growth, which means the newer growth is on the outside of the pot and the old growth remains on the inside, much like a garden perennial. Over time, it might appear that your plant is moving out of its pot, and that's just because it's pushing up new leaves and new roots. One of the most common ways to kill an orchid is in fact overwatering or leaving plants too soggy. When roots are dry, they will be silvery green and will be more green when they soak up water. The best way to water the orchid is by filling up the entire pot and letting it soak for a maximum of 2 minutes. This is because it needs to release gases produced through respiration or photosynthesis through the roots. Then simply lift the plant up and let the water drain away. Orchids do prefer soft water, so if you can, use rainwater. Also, make sure the water is at room temperature. If the area where you have your plant is quite dry, then misting the roots may help if humidity around the plant is too low, but it will not sufficiently water the plant as it drips through the gaps between the potting medium and the roots. Plunging the whole pot in water ensures that all the gaps are filled with water and the roots are fully submerged. You don't need to water them often, approximately 7 to 10 days. Wait until the roots and the bark dry again. So this is an example of a dead root that's no longer functioning. You can easily remove this by snipping off at the base as close as you can to the pot itself, like so. And there's some around here as well. And you can remove any yellowing or dead leaves, just like that. This one. Sometimes, if they're really dead, you can just gently tug them off, and they're taking a little bit longer. We'll do a little snip like that to get in there right to the base. And then this flowering stem has finished. And to get it to reflower again, you've got to chop it back at the base. And you can do that by one node up. So this is where the nodes are. So we're going to chop it just above that node there, just in case of dieback. So, doesn't need that support anymore. And up here, you can see this flower stem is actually producing a clone of your orchid. So this little baby can be chopped off and propagated itself, and you can have another orchid that you can give to friends and family. Some orchids will flower longer than others, and while some have a specific time of the year to flower like Cymbidium, others like Phalaenopsis could flower all year round. When orchids flower is decided by the rate they grow, which is determined by day-night temperatures and length of day. For example, moth orchids will flower with little or no difference between daytime and nighttime temperatures. On the other hand, Cymbidium and Dendrobium need to have a drop of night temperatures for weeks to induce flowering, much as they would experience in their natural environment. Be cautious, as flower buds are sensitive to dropping if exposed to extreme temperatures, especially cold drafts, so don't buy from outdoor market stalls or supermarket foyers during the cold weather. Once the orchid has finished flowering, it's best time to repot it if necessary. Orchid roots always need good air and light, so use orchid bark or specially tailored potting mix for orchids. Cut off the flowering stem once it's turned yellow and dried. On moth orchids, keep the stems if they remain green, as they are likely to produce more flowers or side shoots from the end or nodes. To find a node, look for the small bulky bits on the stem. It may feel daunting when your new orchid has finished flowering and you don't know what to do, but it's best to do nothing. If the plant looks healthy and there's no obvious signs of stress or decline, leave them and they'll get accustomed to their environment. However, if you've had orchids for a few years that didn't flower, here's a few things that you can do. Try moving the orchid to a different location or into a cooler room, such as utility room, bright hallway, bathroom, or even a conservatory, which is ideal. But ensure to check minimum temperatures for each orchid. Cool growing orchids will tolerate temperature ranges of between 10 and 15 degrees Celsius. However, warm growing orchids need temperatures above 15 degrees. Ensure to keep them well away from any heat sources such as radiators or cold drafts. Bear in mind that strong direct sunlight can also cause damage and scorch leaves. Feeding orchids can also support regular flowering. Use orchid feed every other or every 3 out of 4 waterings, using just water for the 4th time. We hope these tips have been useful, and remember, happy orchid roots equals a happy orchid.
If you find our videos helpful, click the like, subscribe and notification buttons below to help us reach more people with free expert advice.